You are not stuck because you lack discipline. You feel stuck because too many futures feel meaningful at the same time. You look at your life and you don't see a single road forward. You see 10 doors, and every one of them feels like it could be you. This isn't fear of effort, because you know how to work hard. It's fear of committing to one path while letting the others fade. Society has a word for people like you: dilettante, jack of all trades, master of none, and that label lands like a quiet accusation. Your curiosity, the thing that makes you feel most alive, slowly starts to feel like a career defect instead of a strength. The problem is not your curiosity. The problem is that you're judging yourself by rules designed for a different world. For most of the last century, success rewarded people who went deep in one narrow lane and stayed there for decades. That world was stable and predictable, feedback was clear, and repetition was enough to win the game. But the world you live in now changes its rules mid-game, rewards arrive late, and patterns only make sense in hindsight. In this kind of world, extreme specialization can become a blindfold instead of an advantage. So when you force yourself to choose one identity forever, something inside you quietly resists. You don't fail because you're unfocused. You fail because the frame you're using doesn't fit your mind. Instead of asking what job title you should pick, a better question is what shape your career is allowed to have. There is the deep single pillar, there is the shallow wide stretch, and then there is a structure designed for people who connect worlds. This is where the anxiety begins to loosen, because you realize you were never meant to collapse into one thin definition. Your mind is built to move between disciplines, to carry patterns from one place and apply them somewhere unexpected. Once you see this, the question is no longer what you must give up forever, but what you should build first, and that's where the real strategy begins. Now we can name the real trap, because once you see it clearly, it loses much of its power over you. The trap is believing that depth and curiosity are opposites, when in reality, they are meant to be built in sequence, not in competition. Most scanners try to go deep in everything at once, and end up shallow everywhere, which creates constant anxiety because there is no solid ground beneath their feet. This is what the dash-shaped life feels like: wide knowledge, weak foundation, and a permanent fear that someone will discover you don't truly stand anywhere. The alternative is not shrinking yourself into one narrow lane forever. It's learning how to build depth one pillar at a time. This is the logic of the M-shaped life. Multiple deep legs built sequentially, connected by a wide base of interests that allow ideas to travel between them. One leg goes deep enough to create real competence and credibility. Another leg does the same in a different domain, and suddenly you are no longer scattered, you are structured. This structure unlocks a powerful advantage called far transfer, the ability to move patterns from one field into another where others can't see them. A specialist applies what they know to problems that look familiar, but a polymath recognizes the same underlying shape hiding inside a completely new situation. This is why someone who understands music can see better structure in software, or why someone fascinated by biology can design better organizations. Your so-called random interests are not distractions. They are a private library of metaphors waiting for the right moment to be used. But this only works if you stop trying to master everything simultaneously and instead commit to what I call serial mastery. Serial mastery means choosing one pillar for a season, not a lifetime, and giving yourself permission to focus there without guilt. 6 months, 12 months, maybe 18, long enough to build real fluency, but short enough that the choice doesn't feel like a prison sentence. The goal is not perfection or elite status. It's reaching the point where you can solve most problems without panic or constant guidance. When that curiosity feels satisfied, you don't quit in frustration. You graduate deliberately and begin building the next leg. This is where many people object and say it sounds risky, unstable, or unrealistic, because they confuse strategic movement with irresponsible drifting. The truth is that this approach becomes far safer when it is anchored to stability, energy management, and systems that hold your ideas, which is exactly what we need to talk about next. Let's start with the anchor, because without an anchor, even a smart strategy feels like chaos. The anchor is stability, not as a life sentence, but as a platform that keeps your nervous system calm enough to build real depth. A lot of scanners secretly choose jobs like roller coasters, high passion, high stress, high identity, and then wonder why they have no energy left to explore anything after work. If your job consumes 110% of you, your many interests stop being a gift and start becoming a painful reminder of what you never get to touch. So reframe the day job the way a strategist would, as low-drain stability that buys you mental surplus. That surplus is the real currency polymaths invest to build their next pillar. This is why good enough can be a power move, because it frees your best hours for the work that compounds. Perfect steals those hours and calls it ambition. Here's a concrete example. Imagine you go deep in data for one season, while keeping a stable role that doesn't fry your brain. After work, you build a storytelling pillar, one script, one video, one presentation at a time. Now you aren't a distracted analyst. You're the person who can turn messy numbers into a clear narrative that decision makers actually act on. That is not dabbling. That is rare leverage created by structure. Second example, you spend a season mastering design fundamentals, then later you return to engineering, and suddenly you see interfaces, workflows, and systems with different eyes. People call it talent, but it's really transfer you earned. But even with stability and serial mastery, there's one more problem that will wreck you if you ignore it. Your mind generates more ideas than your working memory can hold. Think of your working memory like a tiny workbench. If it stays cluttered, you can't build anything new on it. That's why scanners don't just need motivation, they need external storage. An external system is not a fancy productivity hobby, it is a psychological safety net. It lets you capture obsessions without marrying them. One powerful model is a simple card and link system, one idea per note, connected to related notes over time. The magic isn't the note, it's the network that forms when you keep showing up. So when you fall into a one-week obsession, medieval architecture, boxing footwork, microservices, anything, you capture it quickly and move on without guilt. You're not throwing it away, you're storing it for future transfer. 3 years later, you're designing a website or building a product flow, and you open that old note and suddenly see a cathedral blueprint inside your problem. That's the moment your random interests finally pay you back. Now let's clean up the misunderstanding that keeps people stuck. This is not permission to drift forever and call it polymathy. A real M-shaped life has seasons, standards, and deliberate graduation points. If you feel lost, choose one pillar that brings stability or energy, commit for a season, track progress in a simple system, and then decide with clarity instead of panic. Do that twice, and you won't recognize your life a year from now. You were never meant to be one thing. You were meant to connect things, and connection becomes a career when you build it with structure. In the next part, we'll turn this into a practical audit you can do today to pick your first pillar with confidence.